This is Fyodor Dostoyevsky's Crime and Punishment, a work in the public domain. Chapter 2. And what if there has been a search already? What if I find them in my room? But here was his room, nothing and no one in it. No one had peeked in. Even Nastasia had not touched it. But heavens! How could he have left all those things in the hole? He rushed to the corner, slipped his hand under the paper, pulled the things out and lined his pockets with them. There were 8 articles in all. 2 little boxes with earrings or something of the sort. He hardly looked to see. Then 4 small leather cases. There was a chain, too, merely wrapped in newspaper, and something else in newspaper that looked like a decoration. He put them all in the different pockets of his overcoat and the remaining pocket of his trousers, trying to conceal them as much as possible. He took the purse, too. Then he went out of his room, leaving the door open. He walked quickly and resolutely, and though he felt shattered, he had his senses about him. He was afraid of pursuit. He was afraid that in another half hour, another quarter of an hour perhaps, instructions would be issued for his pursuit, and so at all costs he must hide all traces before then. He must clear everything up while he still had some strength, some reasoning power left him. Where was he to go? That had long been settled. Fling them into the canal, and all traces hidden in the water, the thing would be at an end. So he had decided in the night of his delirium, when several times he had had the impulse to get up and go away, to make haste and get rid of it all. But to get rid of it turned out to be a very difficult task. He wandered along the bank of the Ekaterininsky Canal for half an hour or more, and looked several times at the steps running down to the water. But he could not think of carrying out his plan. Either rafts stood at the step's edge, and women were washing clothes on them, or boats were moored there, and people were swarming everywhere. Moreover, he could be seen and noticed from the banks on all sides. It would look suspicious for a man to go down on purpose, stop, and throw something into the water. And what if the boxes were to float instead of sinking? And of course they would. Even as it was, everyone he met seemed to stare and look round, as if they had nothing to do but to watch him. Why is it? Or can it be my fancy? He thought. At last the thought struck him that it might be better to go to the Neva. There were not so many people there, he would be less observed, and it would be more convenient in every way. Above all, it was further off. He wondered how he could have been wandering for a good half hour, worried and anxious in this dangerous past without thinking of it before. And that half hour he had lost over an irrational plan, simply because he had thought of it in delirium. He had become extremely absent and forgetful, and he was aware of it. He certainly must make haste. He walked towards the Neva along V Prospect, but on the way another idea struck him. Why to the Neva? Would it not be better to go somewhere far off, to the islands again, and there hide the things in some solitary place, in a wood or under a bush, and mark the spot perhaps? And though he felt incapable of clear judgment, the idea seemed to him a sound one. But he was not destined to go there, for coming out of V Prospect towards the square, he saw on the left a passage leading between 2 blank walls to a courtyard. On the right hand, the blank unwhitewashed wall of a 4-storied house stretched far into the court. On the left, a wooden hoarding ran parallel with it for 20 paces into the court, and then turned sharply to the left. Here was a deserted fenced-off place where rubbish of different sorts was lying. At the end of the court, the corner of a low, smutty stone shed, apparently part of some workshop, peeped from behind the hoarding. It was probably a carriage builder's or carpenter's shed. The whole place from the entrance was black with coal dust. Here would be the place to throw it, he thought. Not seeing anyone in the yard, he slipped in, and at once saw near the gate a sink, such as is often put in yards where there are many workmen or cab drivers, and on the hoarding above had been scribbled in chalk the time-honoured witticism, "Standing here strictly forbidden." This was all the better, for there would be nothing suspicious about his going in. Here I could throw it all in a heap and get away. Looking round once more, with his hand already in his pocket, he noticed against the outer wall, between the entrance and the sink, a big unhewn stone, weighing perhaps 60 pounds. The other side of the wall was a street. He could hear passers by, always numerous in that part, but he could not be seen from the entrance unless someone came in from the street, which might well happen indeed, so there was need of haste. He bent down over the stone, seized the top of it firmly in both hands, and using all his strength turned it over. Under the stone was a small hollow in the ground, and he immediately emptied his pocket into it. The purse lay at the top, and yet the hollow was not filled up. Then he seized the stone again, and with one twist turned it back, so that it was in the same position again, though it stood a very little higher. But he scraped the earth about it and pressed it at the edges with his foot. Nothing could be noticed. Then he went out and turned into the square. Again an intense, almost unbearable joy overwhelmed him for an instant, as it had in the police office. I have buried my tracks, and who can think of looking under that stone? It has been lying there most likely ever since the house was built, and will lie as many years more. And if it were found, who would think as me? It is all over, no clue. And he laughed. Yes, he remembered that he began laughing, a thin, nervous, noiseless laugh, and went on laughing all the time he was crossing the square. But when he reached the Quai Boulevard where 2 days before he had come upon that girl, his laughter suddenly ceased. Other ideas crept into his mind. He felt all at once that it would be loathsome to pass that seat on which, after the girl was gone, he had sat and pondered, and that it would be hateful, too, to meet that whiskered policeman to whom he had given the 20 kopecks. Damn him! He walked, looking about him angrily and distractedly. All his ideas now seemed to be circling round some single point, and he felt that there really was such a point, and that now, he was left facing that point, and for the first time indeed during the last 2 months. Damn it all, he thought suddenly, in a fit of ungovernable fury. If it has begun, then it has begun. Hang the new life. Good Lord, how stupid it is, and what lies I told today. How despicably I fawned upon that wretched Ilya Petrovitch. But that is all folly. What do I care for them all, and my fawning upon them? It is not that at all. It is not that at all. Suddenly he stopped. A new, utterly unexpected and exceedingly simple question perplexed and bitterly confounded him. If it all has really been done deliberately and not idiotically, if I really had a certain and definite object, how is it? I did not even glance into the purse, and don't know what I had there, for which I have undergone these agonies, and have deliberately undertaken this base, filthy, degrading business. And here I wanted at once to throw into the water the purse together, with all the things which I had not seen either. How's that? Yes, that was so, that was all so. Yet he had known it all before, and it was not a new question for him. Even when it was decided in the night without hesitation and consideration, as though so it must be, as though it could not possibly be otherwise. Yes, he had known it all, and understood it all. It surely had all been settled even yesterday at the moment when he was bending over the box and pulling the jewel cases out of it. Yes, so it was. It is because I am very ill, he decided grimly at last. I have been worrying and fretting myself, and I don't know what I am doing. Yesterday, and the day before yesterday, and all this time I have been worrying myself. I shall get well, and I shall not worry. But what if I don't get well at all? Good God, how sick I am of it all. He walked on without resting. He had a terrible longing for some distraction, but he did not know what to do, what to attempt. A new, overwhelming sensation was gaining more and more mastery over him every moment. This was an immeasurable, almost physical, repulsion for everything surrounding him, an obstinate, malignant feeling of hatred. All who met him were loathsome to him. He loathed their faces, their movements, their gestures. If anyone had addressed him, he felt that he might have spat at him or bitten him. He stopped suddenly on coming out on the bank of the little Neva near the bridge to Vasilievsky Ostrov. Why, he lives here, in that house, he thought. Why, I have not come to Razumihin of my own accord. Here it's the same thing over again. Very interesting to know, though, have I come on purpose, or have I simply walked here by chance? Never mind, I said the day before yesterday that I would go and see him the day after. Well, and so I will. Besides, I really cannot go further now. He went up to Razumihin's room on the 5th floor. The latter was at home in his garret, busily writing at the moment, and he opened the door himself. It was 4 months since they had seen each other. Razumihin was sitting in a ragged dressing gown, with slippers on his bare feet, unkempt, unshaven and unwashed. His face showed surprise. "Is it you?" he cried. He looked his comrade up and down, then after a brief pause he whistled. "As hard up as all that? Why, brother, you've cut me out," he added, looking at Raskolnikov's rags. "Come sit down, you are tired, I'll be bound." And when he had sunk down on the American leather sofa, which was in even worse condition than his own, Razumihin saw at once that his visitor was ill. "Why, you are seriously ill, do you know that?" He began feeling his pulse. Raskolnikov pulled away his hand. "Never mind," he said. "I have come for this. I have no lessons. I wanted, but I don't really want lessons. But I say, you are delirious, you know," Razumihin observed, watching him carefully. "No, I am not." Raskolnikov got up from the sofa. As he had mounted the stairs to Razumihin's, he had not realized that he would be meeting his friend face to face. Now, in a flash, he knew that what he was least of all disposed for at that moment was to be face to face with anyone in the wide world. His spleen rose within him. He almost choked with rage at himself as soon as he crossed Razumihin's threshold. "Goodbye," he said abruptly, and walked to the door. "Stop, stop, you queer fish!" "I don't want to," said the other, again pulling away his hand. "Then why the devil have you come? Are you mad, or what?" "Why, this is almost insulting. I won't let you go like that." "Well then, I came to you because I know no one but you who could help. To begin, because you are kinder than anyone. Cleverer, I mean, and can judge, and now I see that I want nothing. Do you hear? Nothing at all. No one's services, no one's sympathy. I am by myself, alone. Come, that's enough. Leave me alone." "Stay a minute, you sweep. You are a perfect madman, as you like for all I care. I have no lessons, do you see, and I don't care about that, but there's a bookseller, Harrowing, and he takes the place of a lesson. I would not exchange him for 5 lessons. He's doing publishing of a kind, and issuing natural science manuals, and what a circulation they have. The very titles are worth the money. You always maintained that I was a fool, but by Jove, my boy, there are greater fools than I am. Now he is setting up for being advanced. Not that he has an inkling of anything, but of course I encourage him. Here are 2 signatures of the German text. In my opinion, the crudest charlatanism. It discusses the question, is woman a human being? And, of course, triumphantly proves that she is. Harrowing is going to bring out this work as a contribution to the woman question. I am translating it. He will expand these 2.5 signatures into 6. We shall make up a gorgeous title half a page long and bring it out at half a ruble. It will do. He pays me 6 rubles, the signature. It works out to about 15 rubles for the job, and I've had 6 already in advance. When we have finished this, we are going to begin a translation about Wales, and then some of the dullest scandals out of the second part of Les Confessions we have marked for translation. Somebody has told Harrowing that Rousseau was a kind of Radishchev. You may be sure I don't contradict him. Hang him. Well, would you like to do the second signature of Is Woman a Human Being? If you would, take the German and pens and paper. All those are provided, and take 3 rubles, for as I have had 6 rubles in advance on the whole thing, 3 rubles come to you for your share. And when you have finished the signature, there will be another 3 rubles for you. And please don't think I am doing you a service, quite the contrary. As soon as you came in, I saw how you could help me. To begin with, I am weak in spelling, and secondly, I am sometimes utterly adrift in German, so that I make it up as I go along for the most part. The only comfort is that it's bound to be a change for the better. Though who can tell, maybe it's sometimes for the worse. Will you take it?" Raskolnikov took the German sheets in silence, took the 3 rubles, and without a word went out. Razumihin gazed after him in astonishment. But when Raskolnikov was in the next street, he turned back, mounted the stairs to Razumihin's again, and laying on the table the German article and the 3 rubles, went out again, still without uttering a word. "Are you raving, or what?" Razumihin shouted, roused to fury at last. What farce is this? You'll drive me crazy too. What did you come to see me for, damn you?" "I don't want," translation, muttered Raskolnikov from the stairs. "Then what the devil do you want?" shouted Razumihin from above. Raskolnikov continued descending the staircase in silence. "Hey there, where are you living?" No answer. "Well, confound you then." But Raskolnikov was already stepping into the street. On the Nikolaevsky Bridge he was roused to full consciousness again by an unpleasant incident. A coachman, after shouting at him 2 or 3 times, gave him a violent lash on the back with his whip for having almost fallen under his horse's hoofs. The lash so infuriated him that he dashed away to the railing. For some unknown reason he had been walking in the very middle of the bridge in the traffic. He angrily clenched and ground his teeth. He heard laughter, of course. Serves him right. A pickpocket, I dare say. Pretending to be drunk, for sure, and getting under the wheels on purpose, and you have to answer for him. It's a regular profession, that's what it is. But while he stood at the railing, still looking angry and bewildered after the retreating carriage, and rubbing his back, he suddenly felt someone thrust money into his hand. He looked. It was an elderly woman in a kerchief and goatskin shoes, with a girl, probably her daughter, wearing a hat and carrying a green parasol. "Take it, my good man, in Christ's name." He took it, and they passed on. It was a piece of 20 kopecks. From his dress and appearance they might well have taken him for a beggar, asking alms in the streets, and the gift of the 20 kopecks he doubtless owed to the blow, which made them feel sorry for him. He closed his hand on the 20 kopecks, walked on for 10 paces, and turned facing the Neva, looking towards the palace. The sky was without a cloud, and the water was almost bright blue, which is so rare in the Neva. The cupola of the cathedral, which is seen at its best from the bridge about 20 paces from the chapel, glittered in the sunlight, and in the pure air every ornament on it could be clearly distinguished. The pain from the lash went off, and Raskolnikov forgot about it. One uneasy and not quite definite idea occupied him now completely. He stood still and gazed long and intently into the distance. This spot was especially familiar to him. When he was attending the university, he had hundreds of times, generally on his way home, stood still on this spot, gazed at this truly magnificent spectacle, and almost always marvelled at a vague and mysterious emotion it roused in him. It left him strangely cold. This gorgeous picture was for him blank and lifeless. He wondered every time at his sombre and enigmatic impression, and, mistrusting himself, put off finding the explanation of it. He vividly recalled those old doubts and perplexities, and it seemed to him that it was no mere chance that he recalled them now. It struck him as strange and grotesque, that he should have stopped at the same spot as before, as though he actually imagined he could think the same thoughts, be interested in the same theories and pictures that had interested him so short a time ago. He felt it almost amusing, and yet it wrung his heart. Deep down, hidden far away out of sight, all that seemed to him now, all his old past, his old thoughts, his old problems and theories, his old impressions and that picture and himself and all he, felt as though he were flying upwards and everything were vanishing from his sight. Making an unconscious movement with his hand, he suddenly became aware of the piece of money in his fist. He opened his hand, stared at the coin, and with a sweep of his arm flung it into the water. Then he turned and went home. It seemed to him he had cut himself off from everyone and from everything at that moment. Evening was coming on when he reached home, so that he must have been walking about 6 hours. How and where he came back he did not remember. Undressing, and quivering like an overdriven horse, he lay down on the sofa, drew his greatcoat over him, and at once sank into oblivion. It was dusk when he was waked up by a fearful scream. Good God, what a scream! Such unnatural sounds, such howling, wailing, grinding, tears, blows, and curses he had never heard. He could never have imagined such brutality, such frenzy. In terror he sat up in bed, almost swooning with agony. But the fighting, wailing, and cursing grew louder and louder. And then to his intense amazement he caught the voice of his landlady. She was howling, shrieking, and wailing, rapidly, hurriedly, incoherently, so that he could not make out what she was talking about. She was beseeching, no doubt, not to be beaten, for she was being mercilessly beaten on the stairs. The voice of her assailant was so horrible from spite and rage that it was almost a croak, but he too was saying something, and just as quickly and indistinctly, hurrying and spluttering. All at once Raskolnikov trembled. He recognized the voice. It was the voice of Ilya Petrovitch. Ilya Petrovitch here, and beating the landlady. He is kicking her, banging her head against the steps. That's clear. That can be told from the sounds, from the cries and the thuds. How is it? Is the world topsy-turvy? He could hear people running in crowds from all the stories and all the staircases. He heard voices, exclamations, knocking, doors banging. But why, and how could it be? He repeated, thinking seriously that he had gone mad. But no, he heard too distinctly, and they would come to him then next, for no doubt. It's all about that, about yesterday. Good God! He would have fastened his door with the latch, but he could not lift his hand, besides, it would be useless. Terror gripped his heart like ice, tortured him and numbed him. But at last all this uproar, after continuing about 10 minutes, began gradually to subside. The landlady was moaning and groaning. Ilya Petrovitch was still uttering threats and curses. But at last he, too, seemed to be silent, and now he could not be heard. Can he have gone away? Good Lord! Yes, and now the landlady is going too, still weeping and moaning, and then her door slammed. Now the crowd was going from the stairs to their rooms, exclaiming, disputing, calling to one another, raising their voices to a shout, dropping them to a whisper. There must have been numbers of them, almost all the inmates of the block. But good God, how could it be? And why? Why had he come here? Raskolnikov sank worn out on the sofa, but could not close his eyes. He lay for half an hour in such anguish, such an intolerable sensation of infinite terror as he had never experienced before. Suddenly, a bright light flashed into his room. Nastasia came in with a candle and a plate of soup. Looking at him carefully and ascertaining that he was not asleep, she set the candle on the table and began to lay out what she had brought: bread, salt, a plate, a spoon. You've eaten nothing since yesterday, I warrant. You've been trudging about all day, and you're shaking with fever. Nastasia, what were they beating the landlady for? She looked intently at him. Who beat the landlady? Just now, half an hour ago, Ilya Petrovitch, the assistant superintendent, on the stairs. Why was he ill-treating her like that, and why was he here? Nastasia scrutinized him, silent and frowning, and her scrutiny lasted a long time. He felt uneasy, even frightened at her searching eyes. Nastasia, why don't you speak? He said timidly at last in a weak voice. It's the blood, she answered at last softly, as though speaking to herself. Blood? What blood? He muttered, growing white and turning towards the wall. Nastasia still looked at him without speaking. Nobody has been beating the landlady, she declared at last in a firm, resolute voice. He gazed at her, hardly able to breathe. I heard it myself. I was not asleep. I was sitting up, he said still more timidly. I listened a long while. The assistant superintendent came. Everyone ran out onto the stairs from all the flats. No one has been here. That's the blood crying in your ears. When there's no outlet for it, and it gets clotted, you begin fancying things. Will you eat something? He made no answer. Nastasia still stood over him, watching him. Give me something to drink, Nastasia. She went downstairs and returned with a white earthenware jug of water. He remembered only swallowing one sip of the cold water and spilling some on his neck. Then followed forgetfulness. Chapter 3. He was not completely unconscious, however. All the time he was ill. He was in a feverish state, sometimes delirious, sometimes half-conscious. He remembered a great deal afterwards. Sometimes it seemed as though there were a number of people round him. They wanted to take him away somewhere. There was a great deal of squabbling and discussing about him. Then he would be alone in the room. They had all gone away, afraid of him, and only now and then opened the door a crack to look at him. They threatened him, plotted something together, laughed and mocked at him. He remembered Nastasia often at his bedside. He distinguished another person too, whom he seemed to know very well, though he could not remember who he was, and this fretted him, even made him cry. Sometimes he fancied he had been lying there a month, at other times it all seemed part of the same day. But of that he had no recollection, and yet every minute he felt that he had forgotten something he ought to remember. He worried and tormented himself trying to remember, moaned, flew into a rage, or sank into awful, intolerable terror. Then he struggled to get up, would have run away, but someone always prevented him by force, and he sank back into impotence and forgetfulness. At last he returned to complete consciousness. It happened at 10 o'clock in the morning. On fine days the sun shone into the room at that hour, throwing a streak of light on the right wall and the corner near the door. Nastasia was standing beside him with another person, a complete stranger, who was looking at him very inquisitively. He was a young man with a beard, wearing a full, short-waisted coat, and looked like a messenger. The landlady was peeping in at the half-open door. Raskolnikov sat up. "Who is this, Nastasia?" he asked, pointing to the young man. "I say, he's himself again," she said. "He is himself," echoed the man. Concluding that he had returned to his senses, the landlady closed the door and disappeared. She was always shy and dreaded conversations or discussions. She was a woman of 40, not at all bad-looking, fat and buxom, with black eyes and eyebrows, good-natured from fatness and laziness, and absurdly bashful. "Who are you?" he went on, addressing the man. But at that moment the door was flung open, and, stooping a little, as he was so tall, Razumihin came in. "What a cabin it is!" he cried. "I am always knocking my head. You call this a lodging, so you are conscious, brother. I had just heard the news from Pashenka." "He has just come to," said Nastasia. "Just come to," echoed the man again, with a smile. "And who are you?" Razumihin asked, suddenly addressing him. "My name is Razumihin, at your service, not Razumihin, as I am always called, but Razumihin, a student and gentleman, and he is my friend. And who are you?" "I am the messenger from our office, from the merchant Shelopiev, and I've come on business." "Please sit down." Razumihin seated himself on the other side of the table. "It's a good thing you've come to, brother," he went on to Raskolnikov. "For the last 4 days you have scarcely eaten or drunk anything. We had to give you tea in spoonfuls. I brought Zosimov to see you twice." "You remember Zosimov?" He examined you carefully and said at once it was nothing serious. Something seemed to have gone to your head. Some nervous nonsense, the result of bad feeding. He says you have not had enough beer and radish, but it's nothing much, it will pass, and you will be all right. Zosimov is a first-rate fellow. He is making quite a name. Come, I won't keep you," he said, addressing the man again. "Will you explain what you want? You must know, Rodya, this is the second time they have sent from the office, but it was another man last time, and I talked to him." "Who was it came before?" "That was the day before yesterday. I venture to say, if you please, sir." "That was Alexei Semyonovitch. He is in our office too." "He was more intelligent than you, don't you think so?" "Yes, indeed, sir. He is of more weight than I am." "Quite so. Go on." "At your mamma's request, through Afanasy Ivanovitch Farushin, of whom I presume you have heard more than once, a remittance is sent to you from our office," the man began, addressing Raskolnikov. "If you are in an intelligible condition, I've 35 roubles to remit to you, as Semyon Semyonovitch has received from Afanasy Ivanovitch at your mamma's request instructions to that effect, as on previous occasions." "Do you know him, sir?" "Yes, I remember Vahoshin," Raskolnikov said dreamily. "You hear, he knows Vahoshin," cried Razumihin. "He is in an intelligible condition, and I see you are an intelligent man too. Well, it's always pleasant to hear words of wisdom. That's the gentleman, Vahoshin, Afanasy Ivanovitch. And at the request of your mamma, who has sent you a remittance once before in the same manner through him, he did not refuse this time also, and sent instructions to Semyon Semyonovitch some days since to hand you 35 roubles in the hope of better to come." "That hoping for better to come is the best thing you've said, though your mamma is not bad either. Come then, what do you say? Is he fully conscious, eh?" "That's all right, if only he can sign this little paper. He can scrawl his name. Have you got the book?" "Yes, here's the book." "Give it to me. Here, Rodya, sit up. I'll hold you. Take the pen and scribble Raskolnikov for him. For just now, brother, money is sweeter to us than treacle." "I don't want it," said Raskolnikov, pushing away the pen. "Not want it? I won't sign it. How the devil can you do without signing it?" "I don't want the money." "Don't want the money? Come, brother, that's nonsense, I bear witness. Don't trouble, please. It's only that he is on his travels again. But that's pretty common with him at all times, though. You are a man of judgment, and we will take him in hand. That is, more simply, take his hand and he will sign it. Here." "But I can come another time." "No, no. Why should we trouble you? You are a man of judgment. Now, Rodya, don't keep your visitor. You see he is waiting." And he made ready to hold Raskolnikov's hand in earnest. "Stop, I'll do it alone," said the latter, taking the pen and signing his name. The messenger took out the money and went away. "Bravo! And now, brother, are you hungry?" "Yes," answered Raskolnikov. "Is there any soup?" "Some of yesterday's," answered Nastasya, who was still standing there, "with potatoes and rice in it." "Yes?" "I know it by heart. Bring soup and give us some tea." "Very well." Raskolnikov looked at all this with profound astonishment and a dull, unreasoning terror. He made up his mind to keep quiet and see what would happen. "I believe I am not wandering. I believe it's reality," he thought. In a couple of minutes Nastasya returned with the soup and announced that the tea would be ready directly. With the soup she brought 2 spoons, 2 plates, salt, pepper, mustard for the beef, and so on. The table was set as it had not been for a long time. The cloth was clean. "It would not be amiss, Nastasya, if Praskovya Pavlovna were to send us up a couple of bottles of beer. We could empty them." "Well, you are a cool hand," muttered Nastasya, and she departed to carry out his orders. Raskolnikov still gazed wildly with strained attention. Meanwhile, Razumihin sat down on the sofa beside him, as clumsily as a bear put his left arm round Raskolnikov's head, although he was able to sit up, and with his right hand gave him a spoonful of soup, blowing on it that it might not burn him. But the soup was only just warm. Raskolnikov swallowed 1 spoonful greedily, then a second, then a third. But after giving him a few more spoonfuls of soup, Razumihin suddenly stopped and said that he must ask Zosimov whether he ought to have more. Nastasya came in with 2 bottles of beer. "And will you have tea?" "Yes." "Cut along, Nastasya, and bring some tea. For tea we may venture on without the faculty." "But here is the beer." He moved back to his chair, pulled the soup and meat in front of him, and began eating as though he had not touched food for 3 days. "I must tell you, Rodya, I dine like this here every day now," he mumbled with his mouth full of beef, "and it's all Pashenka, your dear little landlady, who sees to that. She loves to do anything for me. I don't ask for it, but of course I don't object. And here's Nastasya with the tea. She is a quick girl. Nastasya, my dear, won't you have some beer? Get along with your nonsense. A cup of tea, then. A cup of tea, maybe. Pour it out. Stay, I'll pour it out myself. Sit down." He poured out 2 cups, left his dinner, and sat on the sofa again. As before, he put his left arm round the sick man's head, raised him up, and gave him tea in spoonfuls, again blowing each spoonful steadily and earnestly, as though this process was the principal and most effective means towards his friend's recovery. Raskolnikov said nothing and made no resistance, though he felt quite strong enough to sit up on the sofa without support, and could not merely have held a cup or a spoon, but even perhaps could have walked about. But from some queer, almost animal, cunning, he conceived the idea of hiding his strength and lying low for a time, pretending if necessary not to be yet in full possession of his faculties, and meanwhile listening to find out what was going on. Yet he could not overcome his sense of repugnance. After sipping a dozen spoonfuls of tea, he suddenly released his head, pushed the spoon away capriciously, and sank back on the pillow. There were actually real pillows under his head now, down pillows in clean cases. He observed that too and took note of it. "Pashenka must give us some raspberry jam today to make him some raspberry tea," said Razumihin, going back to his chair and attacking his soup and beer again. "And where is she to get raspberries for you?" asked Nastasya, balancing a saucer on her 5 outspread fingers and sipping tea through a lump of sugar. "She'll get it at the shop, my dear. You see, Rodya, all sorts of things have been happening while you have been laid up. When you decamped in that rascally way without leaving your address, I felt so angry that I resolved to find you out and punish you. I set to work that very day. How I ran about making inquiries for you. This lodging of yours I had forgotten, though I never remembered it, indeed, because I did not know it. And as for your old lodgings, I could only remember it was at the 5 Corners, Harlamov's house. I kept trying to find that Harlamov's house, and afterwards it turned out that it was not Harlamov's, but Bush's. How one muddles up sounds sometimes. So I lost my temper, and I went on the chance to the address bureau next day, and only fancy, in 2 minutes they looked you up. Your name is down there. My name? I should think so, and yet a General Kobylev they could not find while I was there. Well, it's a long story. But as soon as I did land on this place, I soon got to know all your affairs. All, brother, I know everything, Nastasia here will tell you. I made the acquaintance of Nikodim Fomitch and Ilya Petrovitch, and the house porter and Mr. Zametov, Alexander Grigorievich, the head clerk in the police office, and, last but not least, of Pashenka, Nastasia here knows. He's got round her, Nastasia murmured, smiling slyly. Why don't you put the sugar in your tea, Nastasia Nikiforovna? You are a one, Nastasia cried suddenly, going off into a giggle. I am not Nikiforovna, but Petrovna, she added suddenly, recovering from her mirth. I'll make a note of it. Well, brother, to make a long story short, I was going in for a regular explosion here to uproot all malignant influences in the locality, but Pashenka won the day. I had not expected, brother, to find her so prepossessing. What do you think? Raskolnikov did not speak, but he still kept his eyes fixed upon him, full of alarm. And all that could be wished indeed, in every respect, Razumihin went on, not at all embarrassed by his silence. Ah! The sly dog! Nastasia shrieked again. This conversation afforded her unspeakable delight. It's a pity, brother, that you did not set to work in the right way at first. You ought to have approached her differently. She is, so to speak, a most unaccountable character. But we will talk about her character later. How could you let things come to such a pass that she gave up sending you your dinner? And that IOU. You must have been mad to sign an IOU. And that promise of marriage, when her daughter, Natalia Yegorovna, was alive, I know all about it. But I see that's a delicate matter, and I am an ass, forgive me. But talking of foolishness, do you know Praskovya Pavlovna is not nearly so foolish as you would think at first sight? No, mumbled Raskolnikov, looking away, but feeling that it was better to keep up the conversation. She isn't, is she? Cried Razumihin, delighted to get an answer out of him. But she is not very clever either, eh? She is essentially an unaccountable character. I am sometimes quite at a loss, I assure you. She must be 40, she says she is 36, and of course she has every right to say so. But I swear I judge her intellectually, simply from the metaphysical point of view. There is a sort of symbolism sprung up between us, a sort of algebra or what not. I don't understand it. Well, that's all nonsense. Only, seeing that you are not a student now and have lost your lessons and your clothes, and that through the young lady's death she has no need to treat you as a relation, she suddenly took fright, and as you hid in your den and dropped all your old relations with her, she planned to get rid of you. And she's been cherishing that design a long time, but was sorry to lose the IOU, for you assured her yourself that your mother would pay. It was base of me to say that. My mother herself is almost a beggar, and I told a lie to keep my lodging and be fed, Raskolnikov said loudly and distinctly. Yes, you did very sensibly, but the worst of it is that at that point Mr. Chubarov turns up, a businessman. Pashenka would never have thought of doing anything on her own account. She is too retiring, but the businessman is by no means retiring, and first thing he puts the question, is there any hope of realizing the IOU? Answer, there is. Because he has a mother who would save her Rodya with her 125 rubles pension if she has to starve herself, and a sister too, who would go into bondage for his sake. That's what he was building upon. Why do you start? I know all the ins and outs of your affairs now, my dear boy. It's not for nothing that you were so open with Pashenka when you were her prospective son-in-law, and I say all this as a friend. But I tell you what it is, an honest and sensitive man is open, and a businessman listens and goes on eating you up. Well, then she gave the IOU by way of payment to this Chabarov, and without hesitation he made a formal demand for payment. When I heard of all this I wanted to blow him up too, to clear my conscience. But by that time harmony reigned between me and Pashenka, and I insisted on stopping the whole affair, engaging that you would pay. I went security for you, brother, do you understand? We called Chabarov, flung him 10 rubles, and got the IOU back from him, and here I have the honor of presenting it to you. She trusts your word now. Here, take it, you see I have torn it. Razumihin put the note on the table. Raskolnikov looked at him and turned to the wall without uttering a word. Even Razumihin felt a twinge. I see, brother, he said a moment later, that I have been playing the fool again. I thought I should amuse you with my chatter, and I believe I have only made you cross. Was it you I did not recognize when I was delirious? Raskolnikov asked, after a moment's pause without turning his head. Yes, and you flew into a rage about it, especially when I brought Zametov one day. Zametov? The head clerk? What for? Raskolnikov turned round quickly and fixed his eyes on Razumihin. What's the matter with you? What are you upset about? He wanted to make your acquaintance, because I talked to him a lot about you. How could I have found out so much except from him? He's a capital fellow, brother, first rate, in his own way, of course. Now we are friends, see each other almost every day. I have moved into this part, you know. I have only just moved. I've been with him to Louise Ivanovna once or twice. Do you remember Louise Ivanovna? Did I say anything in delirium? I should think so. You were beside yourself. What did I rave about? What next? What did you rave about? What people do rave about. Well, brother, now I must not lose time to work. He got up from the table and took up his cap. What did I rave about? How he keeps on. Are you afraid of having let out some secret? Don't worry yourself. You said nothing about a countess. But you said a lot about a bulldog, and about earrings and chains, and about Krestovsky Island, and some porter, and Nikodim Fomitch, and Ilya Petrovitch, the assistant superintendent. And another thing that was of special interest to you was your own sock. You whined, give me my sock. Zametov hunted all about your room for your socks, and with his own scented, ring-bedecked fingers he gave you the rag, and only then were you comforted, and for the next 24 hours you held the wretched thing in your hand. We could not get it from you. It is most likely somewhere under your quilt at this moment. And then you asked so piteously for fringe for your trousers. We tried to find out what sort of fringe, but we could not make it out. Now to business. Here are 35 rubles. I take 10 of them, and shall give you an account of them in an hour or two. I will let Zosimov know at the same time, though he ought to have been here long ago, for it is nearly 12. And you, Nastasia, look him pretty often while I am away, to see whether he wants a drink or anything else. And I will tell Pashenka what is wanted myself. Goodbye. He calls her Pashenka. Ah, he's a deep one, said Nastasia as he went out. Then she opened the door and stood listening, but could not resist running downstairs after him. She was very eager to hear what he would say to the landlady. She was evidently quite fascinated by Razumihin. No sooner had she left the room than the sick man flung off the bedclothes and leapt out of bed like a madman. With burning, twitching impatience he had waited for them to be gone, so that he might set to work. But to what work? Now, as though to spite him, it eluded him. Good God, only tell me one thing. Do they know of it yet or not? What if they know it, and are only pretending, mocking me while I am laid up, and then they will come in and tell me that it's been discovered long ago, and that they have only, what am I to do now? That's what I've forgotten, as though on purpose. Forgotten it all at once, I remembered a minute ago. He stood in the middle of the room and gazed in miserable bewilderment about him. He walked to the door, opened it, listened, but that was not what he wanted. Suddenly, as though recalling something, he rushed to the corner where there was a hole under the paper, began examining it, put his hand into the hole, fumbled. But that was not it. He went to the stove, opened it, and began rummaging in the ashes. The frayed edges of his trousers and the rags cut off his pocket were lying there just as he had thrown them. No one had looked then. Then he remembered the sock about which Razumihin had just been telling him. Yes, there it lay on the sofa under the quilt, but it was so covered with dust and grime that Zametov could not have seen anything on it. Bah! Zametov, the police office, and why am I sent for to the police office? Where's the notice? Bah! I am mixing it up, that was then. I looked at my sock then too, but now I have been ill. But what did Zametov come for? Why did Razumihin bring him? He muttered, helplessly sitting on the sofa again. What does it mean? Am I still in delirium, or is it real? I believe it is real. Ah, I remember, I must escape, make haste to escape. Yes, I must escape. Yes, but where? And where are my clothes? I've no boots. They've taken them away. They've hidden them. I understand. Ah, here is my coat. They passed that over, and here is money on the table, thank God. And here's the IOU. I'll take the money and go and take another lodging. They won't find me, yes, but the address bureau. They'll find me, Razumihin will find me. Better escape altogether, far away, to America, and let them do their worst. And take the IOU, it would be of use there. What else shall I take? They think I am ill. They don't know that I can walk. Ha 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 ha. I could see by their eyes that they know all about it. If only I could get downstairs. And what if they have set a watch there? Policeman. What's this, tea? Ah, and here is beer left, half a bottle, cold. He snatched up the bottle, which still contained a glassful of beer, and gulped it down with relish, as though quenching a flame in his breast. But in another minute the beer had gone to his head, and a faint and even pleasant shiver ran down his spine. He lay down and pulled the quilt over him. His sick and incoherent thoughts grew more and more disconnected, and soon a light, pleasant drowsiness came upon him. With a sense of comfort he nestled his head into the pillow, wrapped more closely about him the soft, wadded quilt which had replaced the old, ragged greatcoat, sighed softly and sank into a deep, sound, refreshing sleep. He woke up, hearing someone come in. He opened his eyes and saw Razumihin standing in the doorway, uncertain whether to come in or not. Raskolnikov sat up quickly on the sofa and gazed at him, as though trying to recall something. "Ah, you are not asleep! Here I am! Nastasia, bring in the parcel!" Razumihin shouted down the stairs. "You shall have the account directly. What time is it?" asked Raskolnikov, looking round uneasily. "Yes, you had a fine sleep, brother. It's almost evening. It will be 6 o'clock directly. You have slept more than 6 hours. Good heavens, have I?" "And why not? It will do you good. What's the hurry? A tryst, is it? We've all time before us. I've been waiting for the last 3 hours for you. I've been up twice and found you asleep. I've called on Zosimov twice, not at home, only fancy. But no matter, he will turn up. And I've been out on my own business too. You know I've been moving today, moving with my uncle. I have an uncle living with me now. But that's no matter, to business. Give me the parcel, Nastasya. We will open it directly. And how do you feel now, brother?" "I am quite well. I am not ill." "Razumihin, have you been here long? I tell you I've been waiting for the last 3 hours. No, before. How do you mean? How long have you been coming here? Why, I told you all about it this morning. Don't you remember?" Raskolnikov pondered. The morning seemed like a dream to him. He could not remember alone, and looked inquiringly at Razumihin. Said the latter. "He has forgotten. I fancied then that you were not quite yourself. Now you are better for your sleep. You really look much better. First rate. Well, to business. Look here, my dear boy." He began untying the bundle, which evidently interested him. "Believe me, brother, this is something specially near my heart, for we must make a man of you. Let's begin from the top. Do you see this cap?" he said, taking out of the bundle a fairly good, though cheap and ordinary cap. "Let me try it on." "Presently, afterwards," said Raskolnikov, waving it off pettishly. "Come, Rodya, my boy, don't oppose it. Afterwards will be too late, and I shan't sleep all night, for I bought it by guess without measure." "Just right," he cried triumphantly, fitting it on. "Just your size. A proper head covering is the first thing in dress and a recommendation in its own way. Tolstyakov, a friend of mine, is always obliged to take off his pudding basin when he goes into any public place where other people wear their hats or caps. People think he does it from slavish politeness, but it's simply because he is ashamed of his bird's nest. He is such a boastful fellow. Look, Nastasia, here are 2 specimens of headgear, this Palmerston. He took from the corner Raskolnikov's old battered hat, which for some unknown reason he called a Palmerston, or this jewel. Guess the price, Rodya. What do you suppose I paid for it, Nastasia? He said, turning to her, seeing that Raskolnikov did not speak. 20 kopecks, no more, I dare say, answered Nastasia. 20 kopecks, silly, he cried, offended. Why, nowadays you would cost more than that, 80 kopecks, and that only because it has been worn, and it's bought on condition that when it's worn out, they will give you another next year. Yes, on my word. Well, now let us pass to the United States of America, as they called them at school. I assure you I am proud of these breeches, and he exhibited to Raskolnikov a pair of light, summer trousers of grey woolen material. No holes, no spots, and quite respectable, although a little worn, and a waistcoat to match, quite in the fashion. And its being worn really is an improvement. It's softer, smoother. You see, Rodya, to my thinking, the great thing for getting on in the world is always to keep to the seasons. If you don't insist on having asparagus in January, you keep your money in your purse, and it's the same with this purchase. It's summer now, so I've been buying summer things. Warmer materials will be wanted for autumn, so you will have to throw these away in any case, especially as they will be done for by then from their own lack of coherence, if not your higher standard of luxury. Come, price them. What do you say? 2 roubles, 25 kopecks. And remember the condition, if you wear these out, you will have another suit for nothing. They only do business on that system at Fyodor's. If you've bought a thing once, you are satisfied for life, for you will never go there again of your own free will. Now for the boots. What do you say? You see that they are a bit worn, but they'll last a couple of months, for it's foreign work and foreign leather. The secretary of the English embassy sold them last week. He had only worn them 6 days, but he was very short of cash. Price, 1 ruble and a half. A bargain, but perhaps they won't fit, observed Nastasia. Not fit, just look. And he pulled out of his pocket Raskolnikov's old broken boot, stiffly coated with dry mud. I did not go empty-handed. They took the size from this monster. We all did our best. And as to your linen, your landlady has seen to that. Here, to begin with, are 3 shirts, hempen, but with a fashionable front. Well now then, 80 kopecks the cap, 2 roubles, 25 kopecks the suit, together 3 roubles, 5 kopecks, 1 ruble and a half for the boots, for you see, they are very good. And that makes 4 roubles, 55 kopecks, 5 roubles for the underclothes. They were bought in the lot, which makes exactly 9 roubles, 55 kopecks. 45 kopecks change in coppers. Will you take it? And so, Rodya, you are set up with a complete new rig-out, for your overcoat will serve, and even has a style of its own. That comes from getting one's clothes from Sharma's. As for your socks and other things, I leave them to you. We've 25 roubles left. And as for Pashenka and paying for your lodging, don't you worry. I tell you she'll trust you for anything. And now, brother, let me change your linen, for I dare say you will throw off your illness with your shirt. Let me be. I don't want to. Raskolnikov waved him off. He had listened with disgust to Razumihin's efforts to be playful about his purchases. Come, brother, don't tell me I've been trudging around for nothing, Razumihin insisted. Nastasia, don't be bashful, but help me. That's it. And in spite of Raskolnikov's resistance, he changed his linen. The latter sank back on the pillows, and for a minute or two said nothing. It will be long before I get rid of them, he thought. What money was all that bought with? He asked at last, gazing at the wall. Money? Why, your own. What the messenger brought from Vahushin. Your mother sent it. Have you forgotten that too? I remember now, said Raskolnikov after a long, sullen silence. Razumihin looked at him, frowning and uneasy. A door opened, and a tall, stout man, whose appearance seemed familiar to Raskolnikov, came in. Chapter 4. Zosimov was a tall, fat man with a puffy, colourless, clean-shaven face and straight flaxen hair. He wore spectacles and a big gold ring on his fat finger. He was 27. He had on a light grey, fashionable loose coat, light summer trousers, and everything about him loose, fashionable, and spick and span. His linen was irreproachable, his watch chain was massive. In manner he was slow and, as it were, nonchalant, and at the same time studiously free and easy. He made efforts to conceal his self-importance, but it was apparent at every instant. All his acquaintances found him tedious, but said he was clever at his work. "I've been to you twice today, brother." "You see, he's come to himself," cried Razumihin. I see, and how do we feel now, eh?" said Zosimov to Raskolnikov, watching him carefully, and sitting down at the foot of the sofa, he settled himself as comfortably as he could. "He is still depressed," Razumihin went on. "We've just changed his linen, and he almost cried." "That's very natural. You might have put it off if you did not wish it. His pulse is first rate. Is your head still aching, eh?" "I am well. I am perfectly well," Raskolnikov declared positively and irritably. He raised himself on the sofa and looked at them with glittering eyes, but sank back onto the willow at once and turned to the wall. Zosimov watched him intently. "Very good. Going on all right," he said lazily. "Has he eaten anything?" they told him, and asked what he might have. "He may have anything. Soup, tea, mushrooms and cucumbers, of course you must not give him. He'd better not have meat either, but no need to tell you that." Razumihin and he looked at each other. "No more medicine or anything. I'll look at him again tomorrow. Perhaps today even, but never mind." "Tomorrow evening I shall take him for a walk," said Razumihin. "We are going to the Yusupov garden and then to the Palais de Cristal. I would not disturb him tomorrow at all, but I don't know, a little maybe, but we'll see." "Ah, what a nuisance. I've got a housewarming party tonight. It's only a step from here." "Couldn't he come? He could lie on the sofa." "You are coming?" Razumihin said to Zosimov. "Don't forget, you promised." "All right, only rather later. What are you going to do?" "Oh, nothing. Tea, vodka, herrings. There will be a pie, just our friends." "And who?" "All neighbours here, almost all new friends, except my old uncle, and he is new too. He only arrived in Petersburg yesterday to see to some business of his. We meet once in 5 years. What is he? He's been stagnating all his life as a district postmaster, gets a little pension. He is 65, not worth talking about. But I am fond of him. Porfiry Petrovitch, the head of the investigation department here, but you know him. Is he a relation of yours too? A very distant one. But why are you scowling? Because you quarrelled once. Won't you come then? I don't care a damn for him." "So much the better. Well, there will be some students, a teacher, a government clerk, a musician, an officer, and Zametov." "Do tell me, please, what you or he." Zosimov nodded at Raskolnikov, can have in common with this Zametov. "Oh, you particular gentleman." "Principles. You are worked by principles, as it were by springs. You won't venture to turn round on your own account. If a man is a nice fellow, that's the only principle I go upon. Zametov is a delightful person, though he does take bribes." "Well, he does. And what of it?" "I don't care if he does take bribes," Razumihin cried with unnatural irritability. "I don't praise him for taking bribes. I only say he is a nice man in his own way, but if one looks at men in all ways, are there many good ones left? Why, I am sure I shouldn't be worth a baked onion myself, perhaps with you thrown in." "That's too little. I'd give 2 for you. And I wouldn't give more than 1 for you. No more of your jokes. Zametov is no more than a boy. I can pull his hair, and one must draw him, not repel him. You'll never improve a man by repelling him, especially a boy. One has to be twice as careful with a boy. Oh, you progressive dullards, you don't understand. You harm yourselves running another man down. But if you want to know, we really have something in common." "I should like to know what." "Why? It's all about a house painter. We are getting him out of a mess. Though indeed there's nothing to fear now. The matter is absolutely self-evident. We only put on steam. A painter? Why, haven't I told you about it? I only told you the beginning then about the murder of the old pawnbroker woman. Well, the painter is mixed up in it. Oh, I heard about that murder before and was rather interested in it, partly for one reason. I read about it in the papers too. Lizaveta was murdered too, Nastasia blurted out, suddenly addressing Raskolnikov. She remained in the room all the time, standing by the door listening. Lizaveta, murmured Raskolnikov hardly audibly. Lizaveta, who sold old clothes. Didn't you know her? She used to come here. She mended a shirt for you too. Raskolnikov turned to the wall where in the dirty yellow paper he picked out one clumsy white flower with brown lines on it, and began examining how many petals there were in it, how many scallops in the petals, and how many lines on them. He felt his arms and legs as lifeless as though they had been cut off. He did not attempt to move, but stared obstinately at the flower. But what about the painter? Zosimov interrupted Nastasia's chatter with marked displeasure. She sighed and was silent. Why, he was accused of the murder, Razumihin went on hotly. Was there evidence against him then? Evidence indeed. Evidence that was no evidence, and that's what we have to prove. It was just as they pitched on those fellows, Koch and Pestryakov, at first. Phoo! How stupidly it's all done. It makes one sick, though it's not one's business. Pestryakov may be coming tonight. By the way, Roger, you've heard about the business already. It happened before you were ill, the day before you fainted at the police office while they were talking about it. Zosimov looked curiously at Raskolnikov. He did not stir. But I say, Razumihin, I wonder at you. What a busybody you are, Zosimov observed. Maybe I am, but we will get him off anyway, shouted Razumihin, bringing his fist down on the table. What's the most offensive is not their lying. One can always forgive lying. Lying is a delightful thing, for it leads to truth. What is offensive is that they lie and worship their own lying. I respect Porfiry, but what threw them out at first? The door was locked, and when they came back with the porter it was open. So it followed that Koch and Pestryakov were the murderers. That was their logic. But don't excite yourself. They simply detained them. They could not help that. And, by the way, I've met that man Koch. He used to buy unredeemed pledges from the old woman, eh? Yes, he is a swindler. He buys up bad debts, too. He makes a profession of it, but enough of him. Do you know what makes me angry? It's their sickening, rotten, petrified routine, and this case might be the means of introducing a new method. One can show from the psychological data alone how to get on the track of the real man. We have facts, they say. But facts are not everything. At least half the business lies in how you interpret them. Can you interpret them, then? Anyway, one can't hold one's tongue when one has a feeling, a tangible feeling, that one might be a help if only. Eh, do you know the details of the case? I am waiting to hear about the painter. Oh yes, well, here's the story. Early on the third day after the murder, when they were still dandling Koch and Pestryakov, though they accounted for every step they took, and it was as plain as a pikestaff, an unexpected fact turned up. A peasant called Dushkin, who keeps a dram shop facing the house, brought to the police office a jeweller's case containing some gold earrings, and told a long rigmarole. The day before yesterday, just after 8 o'clock, marked the day and the hour. A journeyman house painter, Nikolai, who had been in to see me already that day, brought me this box of gold earrings and stones and asked me to give him 2 rubles for them. When I asked him where he got them, he said that he picked them up in the street. I did not ask him anything more. I am telling you Dushkin's story. I gave him a note, a ruble that is, for I thought if he did not pawn it with me he would with another. It would all come to the same thing. He'd spend it on drink, so the thing had better be with me. The further you hide it, the quicker you will find it, and if anything turns up, if I hear any rumours, I'll take it to the police. Of course, that's all taradiddle. He lies like a horse, for I know this Dushkin. He is a pawnbroker and a receiver of stolen goods, and he did not cheat Nikolai out of a 30-ruble trinket in order to give it to the police. He was simply afraid. But no matter, to return to Dushkin's story. I've known this peasant, Nikolai Dementiev, from a child. He comes from the same province and district of Zaraisk. We are both Ryazan men. And though Nikolai is not a drunkard, he drinks. And I knew he had a job in that house, painting work with Dmitri, who comes from the same village too. As soon as he got the ruble, he changed it, had a couple of glasses, took his change and went out. But I did not see Dmitri with him then. And the next day I heard that someone had murdered Alyona Ivanovna and her sister, Lizaveta Ivanovna, with an axe. I knew them, and I felt suspicious about the earrings at once, for I knew the murdered woman lent money on pledges. I went to the house and began to make careful inquiries without saying a word to anyone. First of all I asked, "Is Nikolai here?" Dmitri told me that Nikolai had gone off on the spree. He had come home at daybreak drunk, stayed in the house about 10 minutes, and went out again. Dmitri didn't see him again and is finishing the job alone. And their job is on the same staircase as the murder, on the 2nd floor. When I heard all that, I did not say a word to anyone. That's Dushkin's tale. But I found out what I could about the murder and went home feeling as suspicious as ever. And at 8 o'clock this morning, that was the 3rd day, you understand, I saw Nikolai coming in, not sober, though not to say very drunk. He could understand what was said to him. He sat down on the bench and did not speak. There was only one stranger in the bar, and a man I knew asleep on a bench, and our 2 boys. "Have you seen Dmitri?" said I. "No, I haven't," said he. "And you've not been here either?" "Not since the day before yesterday," said he. "And where did you sleep last night?" "In Pesky with the Kolomensky men." "And where did you get those earrings?" I asked. "I found them in the street, and the way he said it was a bit queer. He did not look at me." "Did you hear what happened that very evening, at that very hour, on that same staircase?" said I. "No," said he, "I had not heard." And all the while he was listening, his eyes were staring out of his head, and he turned as white as chalk. I told him all about it, and he took his hat and began getting up. I wanted to keep him. "Wait a bit, Nikolai," said I. "Won't you have a drink?" And I signed to the boy to hold the door, and I came out from behind the bar, but he darted out and down the street to the turning at a run. I have not seen him since. Then my doubts were at an end. It was his doing, as clear as could be. "I should think so," said Zosimov. "Wait, hear the end. Of course they sought high and low for Nikolai. They detained Dushkin and searched his house. Dmitri, too, was arrested. The Kolomensky men also were turned inside out. And the day before yesterday they arrested Nikolai in a tavern at the end of the town. He had gone there, taken the silver cross off his neck and asked for a dram for it. They gave it to him. A few minutes afterwards the woman went to the cowshed, and through a crack in the wall she saw in the stable adjoining he had made a noose of his sash from the beam, stood on a block of wood, and was trying to put his neck in the noose. The woman screeched her hardest. People ran in. "So that's what you were up to." "Take me," he says, "to such and such a police officer. I'll confess everything." Well, they took him to that police station, that is here, with a suitable escort. So they asked him this and that, how old he is, 22, and so on. At the question, "When you were working with Dmitri, didn't you see anyone on the staircase at such and such a time?" Answer, "To be sure, folks may have gone up and down, but I did not notice them." "And didn't you hear anything, any noise, and so on?" "We heard nothing special." "And did you hear, Nikolai, that on the same day widow so-and-so and her sister were murdered and robbed?" "I never knew a thing about it." "The first I heard of it was from Afanasy Pavlovitch the day before yesterday." "And where did you find the earrings?" "I found them on the pavement." "Why didn't you go to work with Dmitri the other day?" "Because I was drinking." "And where were you drinking?" "Oh, in such and such a place." "Why did you run away from Dushkin's?" "Because I was awfully frightened." "What were you frightened of?" "That I should be accused." "How could you be frightened if you felt free from guilt?" Now, Zosimov, you may not believe me, that question was put literally in those words. I know it for a fact. It was repeated to me exactly. What do you say to that? Well, anyway, there's the evidence. I am not talking of the evidence now. I am talking about that question of their own idea of themselves. Well, so they squeezed and squeezed him, and he confessed, I did not find it in the street, but in the flat where I was painting with Dmitri. And how was that? Why, Dmitri and I were painting there all day, and we were just getting ready to go, and Dmitri took a brush and painted my face, and he ran off and I after him. I ran after him, shouting my hardest, and at the bottom of the stairs I ran right against the porter and some gentlemen, and how many gentlemen were there I don't remember. And the porter swore at me, and the other porter swore too, and the porter's wife came out, and swore at us too, and a gentleman came into the entry with a lady, and he swore at us too, for Dmitri and I lay right across the way. I got hold of Dmitri's hair and knocked him down and began beating him. And Dmitri too caught me by the hair and began beating me. But we did it all not for temper, but in a friendly way, for sport. And then Dmitri escaped and ran into the street, and I ran after him, but I did not catch him and went back to the flat alone. I had to clear up my things. I began putting them together, expecting Dmitri to come, and there in the passage, in the corner by the door, I stepped on the box. I saw it lying there wrapped up in paper. I took off the paper, saw some little hooks, undid them, and in the box were the earrings. Behind the door? Lying behind the door? Behind the door? Raskolnikov cried suddenly, staring with a blank look of terror at Razumihin, and he slowly sat up on the sofa, leaning on his hand. Yes, why? What's the matter? What's wrong? Razumihin too got up from his seat. Nothing, Raskolnikov answered faintly, turning to the wall. All were silent for a while. He must have waked from a dream, Razumihin said at last, looking inquiringly at Zossimov. The latter slightly shook his head. Well, go on, said Zossimov. What next? What next? As soon as he saw the earrings, forgetting Dmitri and everything, he took up his cap and ran to Dushkin and, as we know, got a ruble from him. He told a lie, saying he found them in the street, and went off drinking. He keeps repeating his old story about the murder. I know nothing of it, never heard of it till the day before yesterday. And why didn't you come to the police till now? I was frightened. And why did you try to hang yourself? From anxiety. What anxiety? That I should be accused of it. Well, that's the whole story. And now, what do you suppose they deduced from that? Why, there's no supposing. There's a clue, such as it is, a fact. You wouldn't have your painter set free. Now they've simply taken him for the murderer. They haven't a shadow of doubt. That's nonsense. You are excited. But what about the earrings? You must admit that if on the very same day and hour earrings from the old woman's box have come into Nikolai's hands, they must have come there somehow. That's a good deal in such a case. How did they get there? How did they get there? Cried Razumihin. How can you, a doctor, whose duty it is to study man, and who has more opportunity than anyone else for studying human nature, how can you fail to see the character of the man in the whole story? Don't you see at once that the answers he has given in the examination are the holy truth? They came into his hand precisely as he has told us. He stepped on the box and picked it up. The holy truth, but didn't he own himself that he told a lie at first? Listen to me, listen attentively. And the porter, and Koch, and Pestryakov, and the other porter, and the wife of the first porter, and the woman who was sitting in the porter's lodge, and the man Kryukov, who had just got out of a cab at that minute and went in at the entry with a lady on his arm, that is 8 or 10 witnesses, agree that Nikolai had Dmitri on the ground, was lying on him beating him, while Dmitri hung on to his hair, beating him too. They lay right across the way, blocking the thoroughfare. They were sworn at on all sides while they, like children, the very words of the witnesses, were falling over one another, squealing, fighting and laughing with the funniest faces, and, chasing one another like children, they ran into the street. Now take careful note. The bodies upstairs were warm, you understand, warm when they found them. If they, or Nikolai alone, had murdered them and broken open the boxes, or simply taken part in the robbery, allow me to ask you one question. Do their state of mind, their squeals and giggles and childish scuffling at the gate, fit in with axes, bloodshed, fiendish cunning, robbery? They'd just killed them, not 5 or 10 minutes before, for the bodies were still warm, and at once, leaving the flat open, knowing that people would go there at once, flinging away their booty, they rolled about like children, laughing and attracting general attention. And there are a dozen witnesses to swear to that. Of course it is strange. It's impossible indeed, but... Oh, brother, no buts, and if the earrings being found in Nikolai's hands at the very day and hour of the murder constitutes an important piece of circumstantial evidence against him, although the explanation given by him accounts for it, and therefore it does not tell seriously against him, one must take into consideration the facts which prove him innocent, especially as they are facts that cannot be denied. And do you suppose, from the character of our legal system, that they will accept, or that they are in a position to accept, this fact, resting simply on a psychological impossibility, as irrefutable and conclusively breaking down the circumstantial evidence for the prosecution? No, they won't accept it. They certainly won't, because they found the jewel case and the man tried to hang himself, which he could not have done if he hadn't felt guilty. That's the point. That's what excites me. You must understand. Oh, I see you are excited. Wait a bit. I forgot to ask you, what proof is there that the box came from the old woman? That's been proved, said Razumihin with apparent reluctance, frowning. Koch recognized the jewel case and gave the name of the owner, who proved conclusively that it was his. That's bad. Now another point. Did anyone see Nikolai at the time that Koch and Pestriakov were going upstairs at first, and is there no evidence about that? Nobody did see him, Razumihin answered with vexation. That's the worst of it. Even Koch and Pestriakov did not notice them on their way upstairs, though indeed their evidence could not have been worth much. They said they saw the flat was open, and that there must be work going on in it, but they took no special notice, and could not remember whether there actually were men at work in it. So the only evidence for the defense is that they were beating one another and laughing. That constitutes a strong presumption, but how do you explain the facts yourself? How do I explain them? What is there to explain? It's clear. At any rate, the direction in which explanation is to be sought is clear, and the jewel case points to it. The real murderer dropped those earrings. The murderer was upstairs, locked in, when Koch and Pestriakov knocked at the door. Koch, like an ass, did not stay at the door, so the murderer popped out and ran down too, for he had no other way of escape. He hid from Koch, Pestriakov and the porter in the flat, when Nikolai and Dmitri had just run out of it. He stopped there while the porter and others were going upstairs, waited till they were out of hearing, and then went calmly downstairs at the very minute when Dmitri and Nikolai ran out into the street, and there was no one in the entry. Possibly he was seen, but not noticed. There are lots of people going in and out. He must have dropped the earrings out of his pocket when he stood behind the door, and did not notice he dropped them, because he had other things to think of. The jewel case is a conclusive proof that he did stand there. That's how I explain it. Too clever. No, my boy, you're too clever. That beats everything. But why? Why, because everything fits too well, it's too melodramatic. Ach? Razumihin was exclaiming, but at that moment the door opened and a personage came in who was a stranger to all present. Chapter 5. This was a gentleman no longer young, of a stiff and portly appearance, and a cautious and sour countenance. He began by stopping short in the doorway, staring about him with offensive and undisguised astonishment, as though asking himself what sort of place he had come to. Mistrustfully, and with an affectation of being alarmed and almost affronted, he scanned Raskolnikov's low and narrow cabin. With the same amazement he stared at Raskolnikov, who lay undressed, dishevelled, unwashed, on his miserable dirty sofa, looking fixedly at him. Then with the same deliberation he scrutinized the uncouth, unkempt figure and unshaven face of Razumihin, who looked him boldly and inquiringly in the face without rising from his seat. A constrained silence lasted for a couple of minutes, and then, as might be expected, some scene-shifting took place. Reflecting, probably from certain fairly unmistakable signs, that he would get nothing in this cabin by attempting to overawe them. The gentleman softened somewhat and civilly, though with some severity, emphasizing every syllable of his question, addressed Zosimov. Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov, a student, or formerly a student. Zosimov made a slight movement, and would have answered had not Razumihin anticipated him. Here he is, lying on the sofa. What do you want? This familiar, what do you want, seemed to cut the ground from the feet of the pompous gentleman. He was turning to Razumihin, but checked himself in time and turned to Zosimov again. This is Raskolnikov, mumbled Zosimov, nodding towards him. Then he gave a prolonged yawn, opening his mouth as wide as possible. Then he lazily put his hand into his waistcoat pocket, pulled out a huge gold watch in a round hunter's case, opened it, looked at it, and as slowly and lazily proceeded to put it back. Raskolnikov himself lay without speaking, on his back, gazing persistently, though without understanding, at the stranger. Now that his face was turned away from the strange flower on the paper, it was extremely pale and wore a look of anguish, as though he had just undergone an agonizing operation or just been taken from the rack. But the newcomer gradually began to arouse his attention, then his wonder, then suspicion, and even alarm. When Zosimov said, "This is Raskolnikov," he jumped up quickly, sat on the sofa, and with an almost defiant, but weak and breaking, voice articulated, "Yes, I am Raskolnikov. What do you want?" The visitor scrutinized him and pronounced impressively, "Pyotr Petrovitch Luzin. I believe I have reason to hope that my name is not wholly unknown to you." But Raskolnikov, who had expected something quite different, gazed blankly and dreamily at him, making no reply, as though he heard the name of Pyotr Petrovitch for the first time. "Is it possible that you can up to the present have received no information?" asked Pyotr Petrovitch, somewhat disconcerted. In reply, Raskolnikov sank languidly back on the pillow, put his hands behind his head, and gazed at the ceiling. A look of dismay came into Luzin's face. Zosimov and Razumihin stared at him more inquisitively than ever, and at last he showed unmistakable signs of embarrassment. "I had presumed and calculated," he faltered, "that a letter posted more than 10 days, if not a fortnight ago." "I say, why are you standing in the doorway?" Razumihin interrupted suddenly. "If you've something to say, sit down. Nastasia, and you are so crowded. Nastasia, make room. Here's a chair. Thread your way in." He moved his chair back from the table, made a little space between the table and his knees, and waited in a rather cramped position for the visitor to thread his way in. The minute was so chosen that it was impossible to refuse, and the visitor squeezed his way through, hurrying and stumbling. Reaching the chair, he sat down, looking suspiciously at Razumihin. "No need to be nervous," the latter blurted out. "Roger has been ill for the last 5 days and delirious for 3, but now he is recovering and has got an appetite. This is his doctor, who has just had a look at him. I am a comrade of Rodya's, like him, formerly a student, and now I am nursing him, so don't you take any notice of us, but go on with your business." "Thank you. But shall I not disturb the invalid by my presence and conversation?" Pyotr Petrovitch asked of Zosimov. "No," mumbled Zosimov. "You may amuse him." He yawned again. "He has been conscious a long time since the morning," went on Razumihin, whose familiarity seemed so much like unaffected good nature that Pyotr Petrovitch began to be more cheerful, partly, perhaps, because this shabby and impudent person had introduced himself as a student. "Your mamma," began Luzin. Razumihin cleared his throat loudly. Luzin looked at him inquiringly. "That's all right, go on." Luzin shrugged his shoulders. "Your mamma had commenced a letter to you while I was sojourning in her neighbourhood. On my arrival here, I purposely allowed a few days to elapse before coming to see you, in order that I might be fully assured that you were in full possession of the tidings. But now, to my astonishment—" I know, Raskolnikov cried suddenly with impatient vexation. "So you are the fiancé?" "I know, and that's enough." There was no doubt about Pyotr Petrovitch's being offended this time, but he said nothing. He made a violent effort to understand what it all meant. There was a moment's silence. Meanwhile, Raskolnikov, who had turned a little towards him when he answered, began suddenly staring at him again with marked curiosity, as though he had not had a good look at him yet, or as though something new had struck him. He rose from his pillow on purpose to stare at him. There certainly was something peculiar in Pyotr Petrovitch's whole appearance, something which seemed to justify the title of fiancé so unceremoniously applied to him. In the first place, it was evident, far too much so indeed, that Pyotr Petrovitch had made eager use of his few days in the capital to get himself up and rig himself out in expectation of his betrothed, a perfectly innocent and permissible proceeding, indeed. Even his own, perhaps too complacent, consciousness of the agreeable improvement in his appearance might have been forgiven in such circumstances, seeing that Pyotr Petrovitch had taken up the role of fiancé. All his clothes were fresh from the tailor's and were all right, except for being too new and too distinctly appropriate. Even the stylish new round hat had the same significance. Pyotr Petrovitch treated it too respectfully and held it too carefully in his hands. The exquisite pair of lavender gloves, real Louvain, told the same tale, if only from the fact of his not wearing them but carrying them in his hand for show. Light and youthful colours predominated in Pyotr Petrovitch's attire. He wore a charming summer jacket of a fawn shade, light thin trousers, a waistcoat of the same, new and fine linen, a cravat of the lightest cambric with pink stripes on it, and the best of it was, this all suited Pyotr Petrovitch. His very fresh and even handsome face looked younger than his 45 years at all times. His dark mutton-chop whiskers made an agreeable setting on both sides, growing thickly upon his shining, clean-shaven chin. Even his hair, touched here and there with grey, though it had been combed and curled at a hairdresser's, did not give him a stupid appearance, as curled hair usually does, by inevitably suggesting a German on his wedding day. If there really was something unpleasing and repulsive in his rather good-looking and imposing countenance, it was due to quite other causes. After scanning Mr. Luzin unceremoniously, Raskolnikov smiled malignantly, sank back on the pillow and stared at the ceiling as before. But Mr. Luzin hardened his heart and seemed determined to take no notice of their oddities. "I feel the greatest regret at finding you in this situation," he began, again breaking the silence with an effort. "If I had been aware of your illness, I should have come earlier. But you know what business is. I have, too, a very important legal affair in the Senate, not to mention other preoccupations which you may well conjecture. I am expecting your mamma and sister any minute." Raskolnikov made a movement and seemed about to speak. His face showed some excitement. Pyotr Petrovitch paused, waited, but as nothing followed, he went on. "Any minute. I have found a lodging for them on their arrival." "Where?" asked Raskolnikov weakly. "Very near here, in Bakalayev's house." "That's in Voskresensky," put in Razumihin. "There are 2 stories of rooms, let by a merchant called Yushin. I've been there." "Yes, rooms. A disgusting place. Filthy, stinking, and what's more, of doubtful character. Things have happened there, and there are all sorts of queer people living there, and I went there about a scandalous business. It's cheap, though. I could not, of course, find out so much about it, for I am a stranger in Petersburg myself," Pyotr Petrovitch replied huffily. "However, the 2 rooms are exceedingly clean, and as it is for so short a time, I have already taken a permanent, that is, our future flat," he said, addressing Raskolnikov, "and I am having it done up. And meanwhile, I am myself cramped for room in a lodging with my friend Andrei Semyonovitch Lebeziatnikov in the flat of Madame Lipovexel. It was he who told me of Bakalayev's house, too." "Lebeziatnikov?" said Raskolnikov slowly, as if recalling something. "Yes, Andrei Semyonovitch Lebeziatnikov, a clerk in the ministry. Do you know him?" "Yes." "No," Raskolnikov answered. "Excuse me, I fancied so from your inquiry. I was once his guardian, a very nice young man and advanced. I like to meet young people, one learns new things from them." Luzhin looked round hopefully at them all. "How do you mean?" asked Razumihin. "In the most serious and essential matters," Pyotr Petrovitch replied, as though delighted at the question. "You see, it's 10 years since I visited Petersburg. All the novelties, reforms, ideas have reached us in the provinces, but to see it all more clearly, one must be in Petersburg. And it's my notion that you observe and learn most by watching the younger generation. And I confess I am delighted. At what? Your question is a wide one. I may be mistaken, but I fancy I find clearer views, more, so to say, criticism, more practicality. That's true. Zossimov let drop. Nonsense. There's no practicality. Razumihin flew at him. Practicality is a difficult thing to find. It does not drop down from heaven. And for the last 200 years we have been divorced from all practical life. Ideas, if you like, are fermenting, he said to Pyotr Petrovitch, and desire for good exists, though it's in a childish form, and honesty you may find, although there are crowds of brigands. Anyway, there's no practicality. Practicality goes well shod. I don't agree with you, Pyotr Petrovitch replied with evident enjoyment. Of course, people do get carried away and make mistakes, but one must have indulgence. Those mistakes are merely evidence of enthusiasm for the cause and of abnormal external environment. If little has been done, the time has been but short. Of means I will not speak. It's my personal view, if you care to know, that something has been accomplished already. New valuable ideas, new valuable works are circulating in the place of our old dreamy and romantic authors. Literature is taking a maturer form. Many injurious prejudices have been rooted up and turned into ridicule. In a word, we have cut ourselves off irrevocably from the past, and that, to my thinking, is a great thing. He's learnt it by heart to show off, Raskolnikov pronounced suddenly. What? Asked Pyotr Petrovitch, not catching his words, but he received no reply. That's all true, Zossimov hastened to interpose. Isn't it so? Pyotr Petrovitch went on, glancing affably at Zossimov. You must admit, he went on, addressing Razumihin with a shade of triumph and superciliousness, he almost added, young man, that there is an advance, or, as they say now, progress in the name of science and economic truth. A commonplace. No, not a commonplace. Hitherto, for instance, if I were told, love thy neighbour, what came of it? Pyotr Petrovitch went on, perhaps with excessive haste. It came to my tearing my coat in half to share with my neighbour, and we both were left half naked. As a Russian proverb has it, catch several hares, and you won't catch one. Science now tells us, love yourself before all men, for everything in the world rests on self-interest. You love yourself and manage your own affairs properly, and your coat remains whole. Economic truth adds that the better private affairs are organized in society, the more whole coats, so to say, the firmer are its foundations, and the better is the common welfare organized too. Therefore, in acquiring wealth solely and exclusively for myself, I am acquiring, so to speak, for all, and helping to bring to pass my neighbour's getting a little more than a torn coat, and that not from private, personal liberality, but as a consequence of the general advance. The idea is simple, but unhappily, it has been a long time reaching us, being hindered by idealism and sentimentality. And yet it would seem to want very little wit to perceive it. Excuse me, I've very little wit myself, Razumihin cut in sharply, and so let us drop it. I began this discussion with an object, but I've grown so sick during the last 3 years of this chattering to amuse oneself, of this incessant flow of commonplaces, always the same, that by Jove, I blush even when other people talk like that. You are in a hurry, no doubt, to exhibit your acquirements, and I don't blame you, that's quite pardonable. I only wanted to find out what sort of man you are, for so many unscrupulous people have got hold of the progressive cause of late, and have so distorted in their own interests everything they touched, that the whole cause has been dragged in the mire. That's enough. Excuse me, sir, said Luzin, affronted, and speaking with excessive dignity. Do you mean to suggest so unceremoniously that I too— Oh, my dear sir, how could I? Come, that's enough, Razumihin concluded, and he turned abruptly to Zossimov to continue their previous conversation. Pyotr Petrovitch had the good sense to accept the disavowal. He made up his mind to take leave in another minute or two. I trust our acquaintance, he said, addressing Raskolnikov, may, upon your recovery, and in view of the circumstances of which you are aware, become closer. Above all, I hope for your return to health. Raskolnikov did not even turn his head. Pyotr Petrovitch began getting up from his chair. One of her customers must have killed her, Zosimov declared positively. Not a doubt of it, replied Razumihin. Porfiry doesn't give his opinion, but is examining all who have left pledges with her there. Examining them? Raskolnikov asked aloud. Yes, what then? Nothing. How does he get hold of them? Asked Zosimov. Koch has given the names of some of them. Other names are on the wrappers of the pledges, and some have come forward of themselves. It must have been a cunning and practised ruffian. The boldness of it, the coolness. That's just what it wasn't, interposed Razumihin. That's what throws you all off the scent. But I maintain that he is not cunning, not practised, and probably this was his first crime. The supposition that it was a calculated crime and a cunning criminal doesn't work. Suppose him to have been inexperienced, and it's clear that it was only a chance that saved him. And chance may do anything. Why, he did not foresee obstacles, perhaps. And how did he set to work? He took jewels worth 10 or 20 roubles, stuffing his pockets with them, ransacked the old woman's trunks, her rags, and they found 1,500 roubles besides notes in a box in the top drawer of the chest. He did not know how to rob, he could only murder. It was his first crime, I assure you, his first crime. He lost his head, and he got off more by luck than good counsel. You are talking of the murder of the old pawnbroker, I believe. Pyotr Petrovitch put in, addressing Zosimov. He was standing, hat and gloves in hand, but before departing he felt disposed to throw off a few more intellectual phrases. He was evidently anxious to make a favourable impression, and his vanity overcame his prudence. Yes, you've heard of it? Oh yes, being in the neighbourhood. Do you know the details? I can't say that, but another circumstance interests me in the case. The whole question, so to say. Not to speak of the fact that crime has been greatly on the increase among the lower classes during the last 5 years, not to speak of the cases of robbery and arson everywhere. What strikes me as the strangest thing is that in the higher classes too, crime is increasing proportionately. In one place one hears of a student's robbing the mail on the high road. In another place people of good social position forge false banknotes. In Moscow of late a whole gang has been captured who used to forge lottery tickets, and one of the ringleaders was a lecturer in universal history. Then our secretary abroad was murdered from some obscure motive of gain. And if this old woman, the pawnbroker, has been murdered by someone of a higher class in society, for peasants don't pawn gold trinkets, how are we to explain this demoralization of the civilized part of our society? There are many economic changes, put in Zosimov. How are we to explain it? Razumihin caught him up. It might be explained by our inveterate impracticality. How do you mean? What answer had your lecturer in Moscow to make to the question why he was forging notes? Everybody is getting rich one way or another, so I want to make haste to get rich too. I don't remember the exact words, but the upshot was that he wants money for nothing, without waiting or working. We've grown used to having everything ready-made, to walking on crutches, to having our food chewed for us. Then the great hour struck, and every man showed himself in his true colours. The emancipation of the serfs in 1861 is meant. Translator's note. But morality, and so to speak, principles. But why do you worry about it? Raskolnikov interposed suddenly. It's in accordance with your theory. In accordance with my theory? Why, carry out logically the theory you were advocating just now, and it follows that people may be killed. Upon my word, cried Luzin. No, that's not so, put in Zosimov. Raskolnikov lay with a white face and twitching upper lip, breathing painfully. There's a measure in all things, Luzin went on superciliously. Economic ideas are not an incitement to murder, and one has but to suppose. And is it true, Raskolnikov interposed once more suddenly, again in a voice quivering with fury and delight in insulting him, is it true that you told your fiancée, within an hour of her acceptance, that what pleased you most was that she was a beggar, because it was better to raise a wife from poverty? so that you may have complete control over her and reproach her with your being her benefactor." "Upon my word," Luzin cried wrathfully and irritably, crimson with confusion, "to distort my words in this way. Excuse me, allow me to assure you that the report which has reached you, or rather, let me say, has been conveyed to you, has no foundation in truth. And I suspect who, in a word, this arrow, in a word, your mamma, she seemed to me in other things, with all her excellent qualities, of a somewhat high-flown and romantic way of thinking. But I was 1,000 miles from supposing that she would misunderstand and misrepresent things in so fanciful a way. And indeed, I tell you what," cried Raskolnikov, raising himself on his pillow and fixing his piercing, glittering eyes upon him, "I tell you what." "What?" Luzin stood still, waiting with a defiant and offended face. Silence lasted for some seconds. "Why, if ever again you dare to mention a single word about my mother, I shall send you flying downstairs." "What's the matter with you?" cried Razumihin. "So that's how it is?" Luzin turned pale and bit his lip. "Let me tell you, sir," he began deliberately, doing his utmost to restrain himself, but breathing hard. "At the first moment I saw you, you were ill-disposed to me, but I remained here on purpose to find out more. I could forgive a great deal in a sick man and a connection, but you, never after this. I am not ill," cried Raskolnikov. "So much the worse. Go to hell." But Luzin was already leaving without finishing his speech, squeezing between the table and the chair. Razumihin got up this time to let him pass. Without glancing at anyone, and not even nodding to Zosimov, who had for some time been making signs to him to let the sick man alone, he went out, lifting his hat to the level of his shoulders to avoid crushing it as he stooped to go out of the door. And even the curve of his spine was expressive of the horrible insult he had received. How could you, Razumihin said, shaking his head in perplexity. "Let me alone. Let me alone, all of you," Raskolnikov cried in a frenzy. "Will you ever leave off tormenting me? I am not afraid of you. I am not afraid of anyone now. Get away from me. I want to be alone. "Come along," said Zosimov, nodding to Razumihin. "But we can't leave him like this." "Come along," Zosimov repeated insistently, and he went out. Razumihin thought a minute and ran to overtake him. "It might be worse not to obey him," said Zosimov on the stairs. "He mustn't be irritated." "What's the matter with him?" "If only he could get some favourable shock, that's what would do it. At first he was better. You know he has got something on his mind, some fixed idea weighing on him. I am very much afraid so, he must have. Perhaps it's that gentleman, Pyotr Petrovitch. From his conversation, I gather he is going to marry his sister, and that he had received a letter about it just before his illness. Yes, confound the man. He may have upset the case altogether. But have you noticed, he takes no interest in anything. He does not respond to anything except one point on which he seems excited. That's the murder?" Yes, Razumihin agreed. "I noticed that too. He is interested, frightened. It gave him a shock on the day he was ill in the police office. He fainted. Tell me more about that this evening, and I'll tell you something afterwards. He interests me very much. In half an hour I'll go and see him again. There'll be no inflammation, though." "Thanks. And I'll wait with Pashenka meantime, and will keep watch on him through Nastasia." Raskolnikov, left alone, looked with impatience and misery at Nastasia, but she still lingered. "Won't you have some tea now?" she asked. "Later. I am sleepy. Leave me." He turned abruptly to the wall. Nastasia went out.